I welcome you back to Analytics Simplified, and in this video we will be talking about linguistic competence versus performance. So this whole notion of linguistic performance versus competence is going to come in not only the field of linguistics, natural language processing, but also in phonetics. And this whole idea was given by Chomsky, who was not only a philosopher but also a linguistic in his own field. So when we talk about linguistic competence, it is also known as grammatical competence or I language. So depending upon the textbook that you're referring, you can either come up with the term called grammatical competence or I language. So in each of these cases, it essentially refers to the same concept, the concept of linguistic competence. So what is linguistic competence? Linguistic competence can be defined as an unconscious or innate knowledge of grammar that allows the speaker to figure out if the words spoken are grammatically correct or not. Okay, so it is something innate, it is something that has been internalized within the speaker, and because it is internalized, so it cannot be described or evaluated. We just know that the person is there and he has got this innate understanding of what the grammatical rules of a language are, and when that particular person is able to figure out if the words spoken or if the sentence spoken was grammatically correct or not. Now, this whole idea of linguistic competence relates very much to that of generative grammar, because generative grammar also believes that all natives of a language have an unconscious understanding by virtue of which they are able to figure out if the sentences are grammatically correct or not. Okay. Now, when we talk about performance, performance is what the speaker actually delivers. Okay, so right now I'm talking in context to speech, but the same applies also for natural language processing. For example, if we say that the person is in terms of natural language processing, the person is linguistically competent. What does it mean? It basically means that when that person is going to write sentences, those sentences will be grammatically correct because that person already has a good amount of understanding of the rules of grammar. Okay, so this figure I think should describe the basic differences between linguistic performance and competence. So as you can see, competence is something which has been internalized within an individual. Okay, so this is something that will not be visible to the outside world. However, the performance that the speaker or the writer gives is only visible to the audience. Okay, so when we talk about performance, we say that it is actually what is being delivered either in terms of speech or in terms of text generation. For example, we know that there is a competent person and we ask him to write some sentences. Okay, now when he writes some sentences, chances are that he may make up a mistake. So in those cases, chances are more likely that his performance is getting affected and not his competence, because competence is something that has been very much internalized within. We do not have any way to figure out how much competent a person is, or we do not have a way to describe this competence. We can only judge a person based upon his or her performance. Okay, so now if I were to put these two terms together and have a distinction between the two, what we can say is competence is something that has been internalized or mastered. Okay, so if it has been mastered, we already know that the speaker already knows that he has mastered, so there is no need for him to prove to the outside world. However, when it comes to performance, performance is what the speaker is actually going to deliver. Okay, so it's more like a simulation. The person is simulating some behavior. Okay, and what that behavior is the show of his competence. So when this behavior is being simulated, chances are that some mistakes might occur. So if some mistakes are coming, then we say that it is the performance that is getting affected and not the competence. Okay, so when we talk about linguistic competence versus performance, there are also some pressing issues, some different perspectives. For example, there's a lot of debate on why this distinction exists in the first place, because there are a lot of people who still believe that competence and performance should be used interchangeably. Okay, so again, this is an open a field, an open question that still needs to be answered, and I wish and I request you to put some comments regarding what you think about this distinction, like whether it should be allowed in the first place or not. Okay, so I will be waiting for your comments. Moreover, there is another question that is very important in this context. The question is, can the performance be an accurate measure to evaluate competence? So we already know that the person is competent. So naturally, if a person is competent, he will be given only limited number of opportunities to prove himself. So in those limited number of opportunities, he may make up a mistake. So the question is, can performance be a measure of competence? Okay, so yes, there's a person who is who is well read, who is a good speaker, who has got good amount of understanding of the language rules. But then if suppose that person makes a mistake for the first time, so what we have to do is, like, whom to blame? Should I say that the person is less competent, or should I say that the person is competent but somehow on that particular day there was some mistake on his side? So these are some pressing questions that are still open to the research community, because there are a lot of people within the field of linguistics and natural language processing, those that still believe that linguistic competence and performance must not be kept separate. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this small session. I hope you have learned something new.